5 hits in 2 game weeks have seen me plummet in FPL's overall rankings, and now the best defender in the game is out. And yet, far from being despondent, I am enthused by this latest twist in the season's tale, and I see it as further validation that my approach will lead me to success in the medium to long term. And you may think that's crazy and the nightmare is having another fever dream, but when you hear me out, you will see why one final hit, that is the key to unlocking green arrow after green arrow, and why investing just 4 extra points in 1 additional transfer, that will mean I have the transfer advantage for the rest of the season. And who knows, maybe you may just be persuaded that underneath it all there is a lot of method to my madness. So first, it feels like a lifetime ago, but game week 11 was far from ideal for my team. I took the hit to switch Saka to Timber at the worst possible time, a move which cost me 16 points when you factor in the sale of Gabriel. Yes, Munoz broke even on the hit I took to bring him in for Porro, and yes, I would have benched Gabriel if I hadn't sold him, and maybe that would have been even more frustrating. But however I paint it that these moves will pay off longer term, the fact is they have cost me points. Although ironically, if I had done Saka to Rice for a hit in game week 10 and Kudos to Fernandes for another hit last week, they both would have looked like genius moves, even though I would have ended up with just about the same points total that has made me look a complete fool. That's just how it goes sometimes. But still, it could be a lot worse. There is no need to catastrophise for the sake of entertainment. I lost some points. I dropped to 4.1 million in the rankings. Big Dan Burn got sent off. Gabriel's injured and Pope was subbed off with concussion. But still, I feel in a much stronger position even though I have lost some points. If I'm being honest with you, like I always am, had I stuck to 1 free transfer a week, I would have probably used that 1 free transfer in game week 10 to do Pedro to Jew, and that would have been to avoid losing team value and would have meant starting Reinders for his 1 point. I then would have done Reinders to Umbumo in game week 11. Had I done those moves, then I think I would have been 23 points better off when we factor in that minus 20, excluding the scores of Agbadou and Guiu, who would not have played, and also with starting Senesi over Gvardiol last week like I intended. But the story isn't just about those 23 points, because let's look at the team I would have had in game week 12 without all those hits. Pope and Voltemada against Man City, Gvardiol and Haaland away to Newcastle, Gabriel and Saka against Tottenham, Porro and Kudos against Arsenal, Agbadou on the bench, only 1 free transfer. Now you look at the team I actually do have. Instead of Kudos against Arsenal, I have Bruno Fernandes against Everton. Instead of Pedro Porro against Arsenal, I have Daniel Munoz against Wolves. Instead of Gvardiol, destined to concede to Voltemada, I have Jurriën Timber. Yes, I have Rice instead of Saka, but I actually think that they will score pretty similar over the season, so I'm not too worried about that. Is that team 23 points stronger than the one I would have had without the hits? I don't know, but there is certainly a possibility. A Fernandes penalty, a Munoz goal with a clean sheet, and Declan Rice outscoring Saka. If those 3 possibilities become reality, then everything could look brighter in the world. If I manage to break even on those hits after game week 12, I may well be able to claim it was worth feeling like an idiot for 3 weeks. But even if I somehow end up ahead, I still feel the truth is that those hits were blunders. The secret to taking hits is predicting the blanks, and the fact is that Saka, Gvardiol and Joao Pedro have 4 returns between them in 2 game weeks. I took the big hit. I failed to predict the blanks. It went wrong. I doubled down and it blew up in my face to the cost of 1.5 million places in the overall rankings. And yet I can't help but feel that 3rd time may well be the charm. 1 last hit to turn those 4 consecutive red arrows into a glorious green. Now hear me out, because I know it sounds silly. I know I could just do the Gabriel to Van Dijk move that so many are making, but I'm just not convinced that that's the best move, because I'm not convinced by Liverpool's defence at all. However, we are learning learning that I can be wrong about a great many things in this game. So bringing in Van Dijk would make sense because it would stop the bleeding. It would ensure that a big defensive haul from the big Dutchman does not decimate my rank yet again. And however bad Liverpool may have been recently, they do have the fixtures to turn that form around. And yet I see this Gabriel injury as a massive opportunity, and I do not think that Virgil van Dijk is the best use of that opportunity. Liverpool have got Forest next. I mean, that's great, except Forest have a new manager and they've just scored 3 goals. Then it's West Ham, and that's great, except West Ham have a new manager and they've just scored 3 goals. Then it's Sunderland, and that's great, except Sunderland have just scored twice against Chelsea and Arsenal. Then it's Leeds away, Brighton, and then Spurs away. Like, you'd expect Liverpool to do well in that little run, but how many clean sheets would you really commit to? Also, you have to bear in mind that I have a lot of money tied up in my defence. In addition to Gabriel, I have Timber, Munoz, Byrne and Senesi. Maybe, just maybe, that is a mistake. And this Gabriel situation is the intervention of those FPL gods, and they are giving me a chance to redress the balance. So instead of just getting in Van Dijk, what I am actually thinking is that one final 4-point hit, one which strengthens not just my team but my entire squad considerably. And this has to play into our thinking because we have 9 game weeks in the next 6 weeks, with cup football also to factor into the equation. The games are mounting up, and yes, I should have considered that more before sacrificing my 3rd sub spot to GW, but I am considering it now, and it's better late than never. And for me, the hit that makes perfect sense is to replace Gabriel with a cheap defender and to replace GW with the it factor, Igor Thiago. Now, I like this play for a lot of reasons, not least because it gives me the informed striker on penalties, one with great fixtures and no European distractions. In a period of the season where European commitments will impact on performance, having 4 players like Semenyo, Mbeumo, Fernandes and Thiago in my attack, that is a wonderful edge over the field. If it wasn't for Mbeumo going off to the AFCON, they would be set and forget all season. Originally, my plan for this game week was to sell Voltemada to Thiago, a move which would have stung, but from an FPL perspective it would have made a lot of sense. But this Gabriel injury, it affords me the opportunity to not only get Thiago but to keep Voltemada as well, and I always feel happier with the main man of my beloved Newcastle in my team. And I mean Voltemada, he is a classy player, and he seems to have lost a little bit of support in the FPL community, so he could be a nice little edge in this run of fixtures for Newcastle, which I actually think is a lot better than people seem to realise. And the great thing about Thiago is he doesn't really have a bad collection of games all season, except maybe game weeks 24 to 26 when he has Villa, then Newcastle away and then Arsenal at home, and then in the last 3 game weeks of the season when I can just sell him anyway. He can just go into my team and stay there, and that's one fewer position where I need to consider transfers. And this too is an important factor, because the more set and forget players we have, the more we can focus our transfers on attacking the fixture runs for 2 or 3 slots, and I'm starting to think that that is my best chance of rescuing this shambolic season. And this goes back to those previous hits I've taken, because all those players I brought in, they are all players I would be happy to keep for the very long term. The points haven't worked out as hoped, but from a strategy perspective, my team looks very solid. Everyone seems so focused on those AFCON transfers and how they can use them to reshape the squad, but my strategy is different. The big hitter, he plans to save every single one of those AFCON transfers for as long as possible. I took those hits early so I can enter the second half of the season in a massive position of strength, and I I know it may not work out like that because in FPL it rarely does, but from a strategy perspective it is a beautiful play if it comes off. But also from a strategy perspective I have to consider when I will use my free hit, and it is the free hit, which is why I feel the -4 for Thiago this week is the play. Because if I choose to use my free hit in game week 13, then by the game week 14 deadline when I could sign Thiago for free, he could have risen another £500,000 in price. Now I can eat one price rise, indeed I already have, but 6 price rises is an awful lot of money to lose. If I was to hold off on Gabriel for whatever reason, it could easily be a £1,000,000 swing in team value should I play my free hit in game week 13, and for me saving a potential £1,000,000 in team value is worth paying 4 points, especially when it is for a season long hold like Thiago has proven himself to be. Just because I got the hit wrong last week and the week before, that does not mean I will get it wrong this week. I have to back my judgment, because otherwise what is the point of playing the game? It isn't ideal, none of this is. Do you really think that I started this season planning on making myself look as much of an idiot as I have so far this season? And look, my plan for the next few weeks was in the books. I was going to do Volta-Mada to Thiago this week, Burn to O'Reilly or Nunes next week, Pope to Donnarumma in game week 14, Timber to Van Heck in game week 15, and Brian Mbeumo to Bukayo Saka in game week 16. That was my strategy for the weeks ahead, just good old fashioned solid FPL play. But then Gabriel got injured and I have to adapt, and Gabriel and due to a cheap defender in Thiago feels like a glorious adaptation. So that leaves 2 questions: which defender to get and which week to free hitting. And I get why game week 13 is popular, and it may well be the one I go for, but honestly I look at the starting team and I think it looks fine. More to the point, I own Haaland and he is clearly the best captain against Leeds, so the free hit feels underpowered. What I want is a week where it makes sense to go against Haaland with captaincy, and game week 16 looks like the best week, because when Haaland is away to Palace I can free hit in Bukayo Saka as captain against Wolves. I can take out my Newcastle trio away to Sunderland and bring in Brentford players at home to Leeds, or Villa players against West Ham. Game week 16 feels like a sensible week, but I am not 100% sold because it involves trusting that FPL website not to glitch, and for me not to lose out on those 5 free transfers. And while that should be fine and I might just be being a bit paranoid, I'm also not sure whether to take that risk when so much of my strategy revolves around 5 free transfers in the bank. So maybe I just free hit in Isak and Ekitike against Wolves in game week 18 or something. Maybe I even play free hit in game week 15 and I captain Mo Salah against that Leeds defence when Haaland plays the robust Sunderland. But while I do like the look of game week 16, I also want to keep the option of game week 13 open, because home games for Brentford, Man City, Spurs and Villa against Burnley, Leeds, Fulham and Wolves looks delightful, especially with Liverpool against West Ham too. And while I will not commit to it now, the possibility of free hit 13 means I need both Gabriel out and Thiago in this week, or I face the prospect of losing £500,000 or more in team value. So that's why I'm taking the hit, and the question now becomes which defender to bring in, and I can get anyone under 4.9 million at the time of recording, and that is a bit frustrating because Nico O'Reilly is 0.1 million too expensive. But maybe again that is those FPL gods intervening to save me from myself. Lacroix and Gahey are both too much, but Chris Richards is a good, solid, dependable option. There's Mickey van der Ven, and though he does have a mixed bag of fixtures, he rotates beautifully with my other defenders. However, the truth is, if we take out that insane 23 pointer, all we are left with is an injury prone average option with European football, and those aren't good traits in a signing when the fixtures are so intense. My man D-Unit is pushing the idea of a Brentford defender, and I just do not like that idea, but he also suggested Matty Cash, and he is a bit more interesting. Cash has 6 returns in 11 games. He's got Leeds, Wolves and West Ham in his next 5. He could be decent, but I'm still not sold. Van Heck rotates decently enough too, and he was in my original plan, but he was mainly just for that one game against West Ham in game week 15. If I follow my rule of if they blank this game week, will I still want them? If the answer is no, then do not sign them, which is an excellent rule of thumb which I have ignored too much this season. Then that rules Van Heck out too. There's the OG Defcon daddy himself, Joachim Anderson, and he has solid fixtures when needed and he just keeps on ticking over. Plus it would really wind D-Unit up, and what is this game for if not for banter? But honestly, and I do feel a little bit dirty saying this, but if I look at the situation objectively, the obvious defender choice for me is Nordi Mukiele. And look, it is weird for me to say that being a Newcastle fan, but Mukiele is only £4.2 million. Not only that, but you have to remember that I have Big Dan Burn in my squad. Now Big Dan Burn may well become an issue in a few game weeks, I have to bear that in mind, but if I do have both Burn and Mukiele, then not only do they rotate beautifully with Senesi as the third defender in a 3-4-3, but by having both a Newcastle and a Sunderland defender, I guarantee that third defender spot in my team always has the option of a home fixture. The combination of Burn, Senesi and Mukiele means I can target defensive transfers primarily on Munoz and Timber, which ensures I can own the best premium defenders at all times, which feels far more sustainable in the long term. Maybe next week I switch Timber to Gvardiol for a few games, who knows? It's fine to do that because my attack is nailed long term and 3 of my 5 defenders would be too. And of course the extra money that Mukiele generates, that ensures I have the funds to get Gabriel back in the team immediately. I do accept there may be a decision to make about Burn if he does not retain his position when Livramento and Lewis Hall return, but I can give that until game week 16, and by then I'll have 5 free transfers in the bank and I will need to use 1 each week, so a sideways switch from Burn to Livramento in game week 16, that is just fine. So if I take the hit and I get in Mukiele and Thiago, then I would have this team in game week 12, and the only decision is whether to captain Haaland against my own team. And I'm not going to sit here and say he isn't the best captain, because he clearly is. All I will say is that in 6 games against Newcastle, home and away, he has only 1 goal. And yes, Newcastle's defence has been weaker recently, but we won't be playing a 33-year-old centre-half at left-back this weekend. We'll be playing the best left-back in the country. And when we had a left-back with pace in the team earlier in the season, that man finished with 5 clean sheets in 6 game weeks and an assist in the other. And it's St James's Park under the lights. And yes, Newcastle have just been humbled by Brentford, but last season we had a disappointing start to the season and we found ourselves in the bottom half after a humbling by Brentford, and then we went and won the next 9 games on the bounce. And the prospect of having 2 attackers, including a captain, at home to Everton in the last game of the game week, that is an exciting thought. Whether I choose to captain Bruno Fernandes or flying Brian Mbeumo, or I could go for Semenyo, who could well celebrate his recent engagement with a huge haul against West Ham. We know he has an 18-pointer in him. And then you think about how Haaland hasn't hit double figures away from home since the opening day of the season against Wolves, and you put all those pieces together and those Semenyo, Fernandes or Mbeumo captaincies, they look very worthy gambles indeed if you are in a position like I am where you need to make up ground. And you may think I'm daft, but last season I did captain Isak for 32 points when the can't miss must have undeniable best captaincy option ever, Mo Salah, blanked. And then I also got 34 points from a Fernandes captaincy when the entire field went with Haaland for a 12. So I do have form for these kind of differential captaincy punts, and I do like the idea of my beloved Newcastle kick-starting my resurrection up the rankings, so let's just see what happens come the deadline. So to summarise, I have taken 20 points of hits over the last 2 weeks. It's cost me 23 points and it's dropped me 1.5 million places in the rankings. My solution to this situation is to take another hit, bench one of the new signings, and to go against the most explosive striker in world football for captaincy when he's against a team who haven't kept a clean sheet in weeks and have just conceded 3 goals to West Ham and Brentford, and also their best defender is suspended. And to me, that all makes perfect sense.